Now that we've got the foot flared out, we can do the body of the goblet. And it's pretty much the same thing, except it's bigger and it's not as much of a flare as you just open it up and even out the edges. So for this I'm using 50 mil. And I'm going to use a section about 3 inches, maybe a little more. So it's kind of the same thing as I was talking about on the 25. I kind of make a Maria. Not very big. I'm not really pushing on it. I'm just letting it collect. That helps keep the handle nice and thick. And also taking it out, letting that heat soak in, makes for a much more even heat base. I'm kind of starting to draw that Maria apart until it's even with the other walls. Got some kamikaze bugs. Now I'm going to let gravity take the rest of that Maria down. Everything stays nice and centered. Let it cool a little bit. Check it as it's cooling. Keep it spinning. Pull the point off of this end and pop the hole open so it's ready for the next one. So same kind of thing with this. I'm going to punny up to this side. Going to heat back on this shoulder here so that I can center that punty. A little bit of heat on the connection, a little bit back on the shoulder. Let gravity take it down, keep it centered. Now going back to this shoulder, I'm going to condense it down. This back shoulder is going to be the bottom of the cup. So I definitely want some nice thick material there for the connection. If it's too thin, then when you go to connect the stem, it's going to drive you insane. So not too much heat on the handle. You want most of the heat in the body of the tube. Just that back shoulder right there, and then in the tube, a little bit back on the handle, and then straight down into the V-neck. So, same thing with the goblet as with the foot. You don't need anything more than just a pinhole to get the air pressure into the body of the vessel. You don't need a wide opening to, push a lot of air through to pop holes or anything like that. You just need to be able to put pressure into it. Just be careful not to close it up all the way. So now I've got a nice pinhole, and I'm just going to let this back end condense down a little thicker first before I move on. As I'm doing this, I can kind of recenter my handle a little bit as well. I'm going to give it a little puff, but I don't want to blow it out. I just want to even up the wall thickness a little bit. So I'm going to let it cool. Now I'll heat the whole body of it to blow out the bubble. This would be a good time to have sleeves on, but I forgot them. Same kind of thing, I'm doing the diagonal back and forth. The shoulder on one side pointed up towards the shoulder on the other. That way the middle of it's getting heated. The heat from the shoulder coasts out towards the tips. As I'm heating one shoulder, the heat on the other shoulder is sinking into it. Nice and evenly hot. So there's the preliminary bubble. You can see it's a little off center. It's easy to correct with some even heat. So since the wall thickness is so thin, I want to heat it out on the edge of the flame out here. I'm spinning fairly fast. That way the heat doesn't concentrate on one spot at a time. The thicker parts of the walls get more heat, thinner parts get less. Because ultimately you want that whole bubble to come up to temperature all at the same time. If you heat just one band of it, it'll start collapsing and moving in odd ways. let gravity do some correction, come back in and heat some more. And this time a little bit of air pressure. And switch to the other side to correct that side. So the bigger the bubble, the more surface area there is, and therefore the more radiant heat comes off of it. So there's quite a bit of heat coming back at me right now. Stretch. Ideally, you don't really want to have to be doing all these corrections like this. It's all down to the initial preparation, that first blow that you blow it out. So all of the imperfections that were in that at the time that I blew it out got amplified. But hey, I'm a little distracted. I can forgive myself this time. Bit of wind. Alright. So it's not perfect, but like I said, it'll work for this demo. So I'm cutting it right around where I want the lip to be. And I'm not cutting it all the way, I'm not doing a flame cut. I am using a very similar narrow flame that you would use for that, except I don't have the oxygen on the outside, so it's not as narrow as it could be. I'm heating a wider band than I would use for a flame cut. And the reason that I don't want to do a flame cut is there's sometimes weird little strings that are still attached, and those really affect the shape of the lip. So you don't want any of those to happen. So I'm basically going to use that same little trick of heating up a rod and then snapping it. Actually, I don't think I'll need to. I can just open this up. I've got a little bit of a goober there. A little bleb left over. And close this end up. I'm going to heat up that lip until it beads out a little bit. Heat up the lip, a little bit on that back shoulder, and then square off the mouth of it. A little bit more on the lip. And I'm just going to very slightly push it in. Gonna neck it down a little bit and then flare it back out a little bit, and basically repeat that process until that bleb has kind of disappeared a bit. If you heat up that lip too much, then it curls back and gets a lot thicker than the glass underneath it. Ideally, you want the lip to be nice and thin, but I don't think I'm going to get that with this bleb on there. So now I'm just heating to remove some of the tool marks. So now at this point we can take the foot and build the stem onto it. Just going to gather that back until I have a nice thick point on which to weld this. You also don't want any pinholes coming up and through, because it makes it really difficult, if not impossible, to clean the thing. I'm just going to clean up this end a little bit. Nice equal temperatures for the weld. And just let them flow together. You don't want these welds to be a weak point. You want those to be really nice and thoroughly melted. Last thing you want to do is pour a nice bottle of wine, have it fall off onto the table. I'm just kidding, I don't drink wine. I'm in a bottle of beer. So with this one, I'm just gonna do a simple little stretch. Nothing over the top. Very subtle. And then collect a little gather up at the top where I melt off the rod. Alright. Alright, so now that this is cooled off a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and attach the goblet body to the stem. I'm just going to clean up this end a little bit. It's got some schmutz from the V-necking tool. I'm just going to pull all that off. And then kind of heat up a little bit onto the shoulder and let that condense down and thicken up a bit. You can kind of see the shape. So I want that bottom point to be much thicker. Alright, so now I can heat up the stem. I want to keep this point on the goblet at least warm until the stem starts coming up to temperature. It's a bit tricky with the gloves because it's easy for it to slip out. Can use claw grabbers for the body also, but I've only got one decent pair, so I do it this way. Alright, so I've got that gather on the stem about how I want it. But if I have that whole area hot, then when I attach it, it's going to twist and pull a lot more than I'd like it to. So I'm going to let that back side of it cool off a little bit and just heat the tips now. And like I said, you definitely want these to be good welds. You don't want any cold seals, because then it'll just snap off whenever it feels like it. We're just about getting up to a good temperature now. I'm just gonna very slowly turn it, heat that weld all the way around. I got a little bit off center. I'm just gonna quickly try and correct that. And you want to check for, perpendicular. Make sure it's standing up straight. I think this is about as close as I am gonna get this one. The body of it's a little wonky. So there you go. And I can bench cool and be annealed in the kiln later.